Yes, welcome to Liverpool Black History Group, Black Men's History Group. And today we're going to be talking about the politics of black hair. We got my man Jay to my left, also my brother Patrick Graham, and our man Chase.
The dandruff side of hair.
We're glad to set up this for this podcast. So what we really want to talk about is hair politics, and there's so many ways we can go into this. I'm going to start off by talking about dreadlocks, because dreadlocks, now check the word dread locks. Okay, so there's a significance in the word dread, because when Rastafarians come on the scene portraying these locks, this long matted long hair, it wasn't socially acceptable, especially in the islands of the Caribbean, in Jamaica, where Rastafarians rise up. And the hair politics really come in terms of, okay, the Eurocentric way of having your hair was to straighten it with a hot comb, and this was acceptable, especially in the Caribbean and in the Americas in the early 20s and 30s and so on. But when that Afrocentric concept, especially the Rastafarian movement, came into being in the 1930s, or you could say the 1920s, the image of the Mau Mau and certain images that we've seen through the liberation of Africa encouraged the locks growing. Now, why it was called dreadlocks? Because it was supposed to have a dread appearance. So when people seen the dreadlocks, it was kind of something that was terrible and dreadful, because it was throwing off the shackles of this colonial way of having your hair nice and combed and creamed and so on. So what I found today, the struggle that we had growing our dreadlocks started like I say, from within the Caribbean. Then when our parents and people migrated to Britain, the last thing they wanted was their children to grow dreadlocks. So even me, myself, growing as a young Rasta man, starting to grow my dreadlocks from the age of 11, 12, and many others. We got a fight from our parents, from the people in our community. It just was not socially acceptable, especially the way we grow them. Anyone seen that image of the group Steel Pulse with the big horn dreadlocks? So we tried to grow them as what we would call Congo and Bongo. You know, even words that weren't acceptable. That's why even we adopted them things that anything African was seen as non-acceptable. So man started calling himself Ras Bongo, Ras Congo, and these type of things, which are African words to identify with our past. So we formed our locks thick. It wasn't supposed to look pretty, you know, hence the word dreadlocks. So nowadays, you see the youths, sometimes the hair politics, and I see it as a cultural revolution in some sense, that everybody has adopted dreadlocks, but sometimes things can become a fad. And most of the youths nowadays, all of the locks look the same. And we know that when you grow locks, everyone's hair doesn't grow the same, you know. But you find that now everyone's got these little thin, nice locks that almost look like, and you can braid them, plait them.
The micro braids.
Yeah, you know, real curly, pretty locks and stuff like that. And I even see people differentiating their Rasta locks, their pretty locks or curly locks or braided locks. So there's a real differentiation with dreadlocks nowadays. But I still think part of this cultural identity is for us to have our own hairstyles and stuff like that. So dreadlocks is a good way of capturing that, because dreadlocks, Rasta weren't the first to carry dreadlocks, you know, and we see that there's a history of dreadlocks going through Africa and even in India, you know. So we're not the pioneers of dreadlocks, but it was something that we adopted in terms of to try and throw off certain European attire, European, the way they wanted us to look, you know. So if anyone else wants to,
there's so many things. Like for instance, my family's from Barbados. Dreadlocks were illegal, like literally illegal. Cayman Islands, I know for a fact that they were unheard of there as well. You know, there's so many. I mean, even to the point of when my mother obviously, you know, she was born in the 40s, so she straightened her hair, did all of that, and then when she got to a point where she's like, I'm kind of tired of this, she wanted to grow she wanted to grow locks. My dad was like, nah. You know what I mean?
Nah.
And even myself, you know, I've done several different types of hairdo. I did locks for a bit, but they just didn't take in the way that I wanted them to. In a long story short.
So were twisties like the shorter version? Because you got a little bit of a twisties.
This isn't twisted. This is just how my hair comes out of my head,
All
which
right,
is
bro,
what
I was just helping.
Which is one of the things that you know, we want to talk about politics. We want to talk about how I can't get a job with hair like this. I mean, I've been told unceremoniously that, oh, why does your hair always look a mess? I'm like, well, this is how my hair comes out of my head. You know, your white colleagues, that's how their hair comes out of their head. Why is it a problem for me? You know, those sorts of things are massive things. I've been told by a casting agent, oh, you'd be more marketable with short hair. You know, things like that come up. And, you know, my son, it always comes back to my son. He doesn't like the barber. So he started growing his hair. And the only reason that I started growing my hair was to pave a way for him. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, he wants to be in entertainment and those types of things. So I'm like, okay, the only way that I'm gonna know what he's gonna experience is to experience it myself. So grew my hair out, and as I said, I mean, you know, as I said, you be more marketable with short hair. Oh, we're not looking for anybody with that type of hair. Can you cut? Would you mind cutting it? It's like, well, no, I'm not. You're not going to cut my hair. But then, you know, come back to other things. As I said, it sprawls. You know, you go to sets nowadays, and there are very few black hairdressers, black hair and makeup people. So, you know, I've been to places where some, you know, props to them. They do what they're doing, and the woman say, "Oh, we should be okay. I've done Idris Elba's hair. Idris Elba doesn't have hair. What are you talking about?" You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, you're trying to, you know, they're trying to cut my hair, you know, into some sort of shape, and I'm like, you know, I leave there with a lopsided thing and all sorts of things. So as black people, we have these problems because the people who control what we look like on screen and what we look like on like in jobs and things are not us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So as I said, I mean, I'm lucky in the sense that I have that good hair.
You think you have good hair?
This is what I've been told. You know what I mean? And that's as I said,
come in
it
on
comes
that
back
before we bring someone else in is in terms of, because especially the tighter your hair is, especially amongst people from the Caribbean, that's seen as bad hair.
Exactly.
You know, so the looser it is, boy, I have good hair, man.
Yeah.
You know,
man,
or
yeah.
if you straighten it, it's good hair.
Yeah.
Or pretty hair, they say in Jamaica.
Yeah.
You have pretty hair, you know. But if your hair is too tight and too kink, it's not good hair, not acceptable.
And these are the
Just
issues.
maybe come in as well.
The bald man wants to come in.
The viewers will be looking thinking, well, does this guy even have any knowledge of hair? Well, yeah, this guy's got lots of knowledge of hair, because when I was born I had loads of hair, and up to just 10 years ago I had a, you know, when it was out and it wasn't cornrowed, quite a formidable afro, you know what I mean? But just picking up on something what Jay said, where people were saying, why does his hair look so messy, it's not marketable, he's not getting a job. You know, people got to look at the Prime Minister of this country, who's, when we're talking about hair being messy, and he's the Prime Minister of the country. So, you know, how marketable does your hair need to be to become Prime Minister in that sense?
Or
that
the American President Trump.
Exactly, that aside, you know, what my brother mentioned about, you know, the difficulties and the issues coming from a Caribbean family with growing dreadlocks. You know, there's a couple of years between us, and as a youngster, you know, knew of all the negative things that were being said and the issues that he would have with having his hair the way he wanted it. Fortunately for me, it's a double-edged sword in a sense, because in one way it was like, well, it put me off getting my hair like that, even though I liked to see, you know, Rasta dreadlocks, and when you could see Bob Marley and people shake their head, and you know, when we would go to the swimming baths even as youngsters and he would get out and shake it, I was thinking, I'd love to be able to do that, my hair's not long enough. But, you know, all things what happened at home, that put me off thinking I don't need or don't want that hassle, but it didn't stop me from not wanting to have that look, you know what I mean? And, you know, and in later years, as I grew older, you know, I experimented and messed around, even went through the stage of getting my hair, what the Americans will call jerry curl, what we'll call
Jerry
perm over
curl.
here.
Oh my God, they were
So,
painful.
You know,
I never did
went
that.
through them stages.
I did
And
that.
as a youngster, I remember going to Jamaica with that style. And, you know, it was funny because only mainly in Spanish Town, when we passed through Spanish Town, everyone would call, hey, Michael Jackson, wow, Michael Jackson, they called me. But nowhere else, you know, Kingston and in country, no one else seen it as an issue. But, you know, that's what put me off having that style after that again, because it not only ruined me hair and took several years to get back its proper thick, proper afro texture, but the sun, because of the creams and the oils you put on it, the sun burnt it and turned it almost orangey, reddy colour while I was over there. So, but that aside, you know, hair politics is a serious thing, because once you take it outside of, like, the issues that have happened within the Caribbean and our own people, you know, saying what is good hair and what is bad hair, as in the tighter afro is bad, the looser is good. That was only through indoctrination from white society, putting that onto you as to what's good is what it wasn't a natural progression. And once people started to develop and realise, well, our hair is beautiful, it's black and it's beautiful, and in a lot of the movements, especially, you know, I'll talk about America, even though we're in England, simply because
I'm going to talk about America,
Black
bro.
Panther
Yeah,
Party,
let the American talk about America. What's
the
wrong
Black
with you?
Panther Party coming out of Oakland.
Doing it.
Black Panther Party coming out of Oakland, and a lot of the styles they adopted, you know, looking at inspirations from East African hairstyles in Kenya and Ethiopia, and the big afros. You see depictions of a lot of the Ethiopian warriors from the Second World War. They had really big, and I mean really big afros.
Nefertiti.
Yeah, and so forth. And they modelled themselves, a lot of these people, you know what I mean? And then that's when, you know, hair politics moved again, and it become seen as, because it's so associated with black people and black people's struggle for equality and rights and so forth, it become to seen as a threat to white society. And
Yeah,
they really
that's
clamped
from
down.
long before that. That's from long before that.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
Chase, what were you going to
Chase,
say about,
come in, yes.
you know?
So yeah, so I was gonna, you know, like talk about, you know, going all the way back to like the little Rascals, you know, where we had the little when they had little plaits in their hair, you know, little Farina and all of them, you know, because I think it's like what Errol said, it's about control, you know. It's not just all that girl going, don't touch my hair. It's like the hair was the one thing that I think people had control over, you know. And so what they didn't want is, you either wanted the parent who wanted their kids to fit in, cross over, straighten their hair, make it, you know, tight, or you had it like, no, we want it to be the way we want it. So they would plait it, you know, Afro puff it, you know, Afro hair it, you know, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, you talk about the, you know, the 60s. I mean, you know, we also had an Afro scene in the 70s with Soul Train and Black is Beautiful and all the movement stuff. You know, yeah, no, exactly. And so the Afro was the thing that became the black thing in America, was the Afro. And it's like, how big can you grow it? You know, for those out there who know Jimmy Jagney, it grow really nice. But, you know, and it's difficult to do that, but, you know, I don't know how you sleep in that. But then you also had the people who are artists who wanted to process their hair. So they had to, you know, like lay it down, smooth it out, you know, put the, you know, the wraps around it and all of that kind of stuff. And yes, I did indeed do the period of the Jerry curl, you know, where with the pink juice that you put it on, it stuff does burn. But it was even funnier because of that movie Coming to America with Eddie Murphy, you know, with Eric LaSalle, you know, it's like they would point out, like, you know, you always leave wet stains on the couch. And it's like, like, what's going what up, bro? You know, Jerry
Definitely.
Or Hollywood Shuffle with the I need my activator, man.
Oh my god, activator. that was the thing. So yeah, I mean, but it was. I think it's really good when you talk about hair politics, because I say we always see it from a female perspective, like in that movie Chris Rock did, Good Hair. You know, it's always about,
and the one
you know, weaves
well.
and all of that other kind of stuff. And that's one thing I will say. I don't really account the brothers like getting weaves in their hair and going that far.
It's happening at the moment.
Are they really?
Yeah,
no,
it's happening.
That. No, bro, please don't.
Sometimes we want to keep it. Well, like I say, put fun and joke aside.
I know.
In terms of the historical context of the attack on black hair really comes from slavery. Because even in Harriet Tubman's days, and even on the slave ship, and even from African culture itself, the hair signified messages, just like we had the drum, you know, which the drum, when we talk about the talking drum, I used to think, how can a drum talk? Well, only when I joined the dance group, I realized what it was. Certain beats meant certain moves, certain movements, and so on. So it was the same with the braiding of the hair and different hairstyles. For instance, when people were going to war, they wore their hair in a different setting. So even in the time of slavery, where Harriet Tubman had this, what they call the Underground Railway, and people were passing through, the field slaves would braid their hair or have their hair in a certain fashion or a way, which would guide the person coming through and let them know.
No, I know they had signs.
There's
in the
some
trees.
Well, it was even in the hair.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, there was signs in the hair.
I didn't know.
You know, and until some house found out.
All right, man. Let's just
and then they used to just shave everyone's hair.
Yeah.
And then there was even
to hide the messages.
Yeah, and then beyond that, there was like after emancipation in the States, there was a whole thing of black women using their hair to attract black men. So they made laws that black women had to cover their hair, and then they got mad because they started having these elaborate bonnets and things.
Yeah.
So it's always been control, and that's the thing. I mean, even as I said, I always repeat. I'm from Bermuda, always repping. Thank you very much.
You're always repping.
Always repping. I went to, quote unquote, the first integrated black high school, the first integrated high school, which means basically the first black high school.
Yeah.
And I remember during my year there was a guy in my class, and they were mad at him because he refused to comb his hair. Like, he refused. He was like, "No, I'm not. This is what my hair is going to be. This is what it's going to be like." And they tried everything to like suspend him and do all sorts of things to him. And this is from a school that's supposedly, the black school. Mm-hmm. So it's always been our problem. As I said, it's always it's something that's been enforced on us, but it's also something that we took on in that sense, where it's the same thing. That, he's got good hair, or he's got N-word naps, and he looks like an African, blah blah. These are all the things that we've taken on, and as you said, like nowadays, that's not as much of an issue I see. Obviously, I'm a lot older now, so I don't know what the youth are doing, but the youth nowadays seem to embrace that this is my hair and I can do whatever I want with it, and you can't tell me what not to do. But although they're still being attacked in school, you can't have an afro. Your hair is distracting. These sorts of things. You know what I mean? It's,
no. But also, I wanted to point out again, back into America, is like the Nefertiti, design, because she had like the high top fade, and of course, then that's something that the brothers could do, because the women would have the bouffant. Right, the bouffant hair, especially if they want to sing in Motown. Yeah. But the brothers, like in the movie House Party, Kid and Play, they had the high top fade where they emphasized it. And then there was also Kwame, from the Bone Age.
Oh wow!
What he did was, he colored like circles, polka dots into the high top fade. But what happened was that is one of the the Gumby. Oh my God, I forgot about the Gumby. Kumo D and Big Daddy Kane with the Gumby.
Yeah.
You remember Gumby? Yeah. Anyway, so these were hairstyles that brothers had taken on in the 70s that still exist today. Maybe not the Gumby, but
things go in circles.
This was a crown. This was like an African crown, even though it was a queen like Nefertiti. It was an African crown that the brothers could take on and tackle and everything. And this is what young people, as you say, you don't know what they're doing today. This is what like they're still doing. They're still doing high top fades. They're still doing plaits. They're still. It might not be doing Jerry curls. I mean, I don't know who's out there doing that. You know, but what I wanted to go back to, what Errol was saying is about the Rastafarian and stuff like that. You know, we did in the 70s. I mean, you know, I am that old. We did look at it like that was them. But are you saying that it didn't come from a particular culture? It was like a particular movement, would you say? It wasn't like it was like they came from like a group in, you know, Barbados or anything. You're saying that it was a group movement to choose to be Rastafarian. I don't know if you explained that. That's what I'm asking.
Okay, it's in terms of shaking off the shackles and having this what you would call a cultural revolution. Hair being part of it, dress being part of it. You know, just like I always refer to, like the Chinese had a massive cultural revolution where they just threw off everything that was European, wear their own clothes, speak their own language, wear their own hairstyles. Yeah. We as black people have done this wittingly and unwittingly. Sometimes we don't, like all the things that you've just spoke about, all this, that hip hop period from the dreadlocks to the all the different, that's a massive cultural revolution in here.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, wittingly or unwittingly, sometimes we're not aware what we're doing.
Well, it's a power. They knew that white people couldn't do that. They knew
exactly
that,
as well. Yeah,
you know, you couldn't. No, they can't grow high top fade, bro.
They tried.
But what I'm saying is that in terms of it sometimes it becomes a fad and it becomes a style. Okay, so that's why I say unwittingly.
Like,
you know, because people are sometimes not making the statement. You just like the hairstyle. Yeah, just like when the youths were starting to do patterns in the hair with the Barbarian thing. Yeah, you know, which is it's all good because it's another form of identity and saying, well, I don't want to do that conventional thing of just having the hair straight or whatever, you know.
I need a lightning bolt in my hair.
Yeah, or a basketball or
oh my God.
You know, whatever it may be, or a word or something like that. But I just think that it's still good, even though people are not aware of what they're doing sometimes, you know, because these sometimes what happens within the wider society, they market it as fashion, but really it's cultural identity. That's what we're trying to grasp at.
And that's just add on to that because
you're bold, so no.
Just to pick up from what
you don't belong on this table, bro.
You can shout, but as we know, who shouts loudest doesn't mean he's right. So you can shout all you want, but at the end of the day, just points what you've all mentioned, what Jay mentioned before about someone saying I've done it yourself was here and so forth. You know, there is strides being made forward. A lot of the young people, which I like seeing, are sporting afros and growing the hair more naturally. Again, some knowingly, some unknowingly. You know what I mean? Not making that statement. There's a girl called Michaela who has introduced into Liverpool College. A course.
Oh you were talking about that. Yeah.
You know, it's not as great, it's not as big as it should be, but it's a start.
Yes,
and the aim is to make it bigger. And you know, all due respect to her, where they'll be teaching as part of people learning about hairstyle, and they will also learn how to style and
makeup
for black hair. Yeah. You know what I mean? Which should have been done a long time ago.
Because
it's only
definitely
you can go to like a black barber that can do that. You know, there may be some downsides to that where it's white society looking to just cash in on black hair and not train up enough black people within that. They'll be the ones who don't get access to the courses as much to do that, even though they can do it anyway, but to just get a formal qualification in that. But all these different issues, one of the issues I want to mention where he talked about the hair, it's obstructive, it's this and that. The case of the young girl, Ruby Williams, when she was studying for the GCSE, she was 14. This was in a school in Hackney in London. She eventually won the case over the school. But basically, she had an afro. She brought her the afro, and she was constantly being sent home. And the ridiculous excuses were, first of all, it goes against the uniform policy. And secondly, she was obstructing the view of the whiteboard to other pupils. So,
did they say the whiteboard or the board?
The
it's a whiteboard, isn't it?
It is a whiteboard, but I mean, I
most
just
of
want
them
to know.
don't use the term blackboard now because they don't have them, but they will call it a chalkboard. But this was actually a whiteboard.
Yeah.
But anyway, that aside. And what they were doing, they were constantly sending her home. They'd stop her in the corridor and say things like, "Oh, not this again with the hair," and it really affected her mental health, of course, because she was starting to have them feelings of, you know, is there something wrong with me? Is there something wrong with my hair? Should I do this? Should I? And imagine if she was tall. What would they say? You're too tall. You're blocking someone's view. They just say, no, you sit there and you sit here. It's that simple. It's that simple. But to say it goes against uniform policy, you know.
But that's the issue.
It's basic racism. She won the case in the end. She was awarded some damages, but it was not to say, even to the point of, in year 7, she had straighter hair. When she graduated and they had the school yearbook and the photographs, they actually used a picture of her. She was in year 11, they used a picture from year 7 to portray it in the school yearbook because they didn't want to portray it with the afro hairstyle. And this is the lengths that they will go to deny us our cultural, natural look. Just let me finish just one other point, because this has been in the news big time just before the Olympics, with the swimming cap, which was designed specifically to accommodate women with afro hair. And because the other swimming caps to use, water was getting in, it was damaging the hair. In order to look after it and treat it, it was a long process of oils and this and that and all the chemicals in the water. So this swimming cap was designed by, I can't remember the name of the company, but it was designed by a company, and the company were then told by officials that this cap is not suitable because in their exact words was that it does not follow the natural form of the head. And to me, what that means is, if it doesn't follow the natural form of the head, that means they're saying these black women are unnatural. Their form of the head is unnatural, because the opposite of natural is unnatural.
Yeah, of course.
It's that simple. So who defines what is natural and unnatural when it comes? That's just based on a white Eurocentric look of how hair should be.
Bringing Jay in before we
that's the thing. I mean, there are so many things, and again, it comes back to what we do for our children. Like, what do we show our children is right and wrong, and what is, you know, as I said, like I only grew my hair because my son wanted to grow his hair. So I wanted to make sure that he knew how to take care of his hair, how to make sure that his hair was, you know, if it's, you know, at the moment it needs a trim because he needs to get rid of the dead ends and he needs to do all of that type of stuff. But if I didn't do it, then he's just going to be doing it on his own, and I'm not going to have that. You know what I mean? So for us as adults and parents and uncles and elders and whatever else, we need to remember that as well. And there are a lot of our elders that are still on this, oh, your hair is nappy, oh, your hair is, you need to straighten your hair, well, how come you know what I mean? And I know that women get it a lot more than men do. And again, it's like, should we really be mad at weaves? Bad weaves, I always say. But anyway,
we're gonna really have to do a part 2 on this, because what I would like is to bring some young people into the studio to talk about how they're facing problems with hair. Because every now and again, even in the Caribbean, there was an incident not long ago in Jamaica where a young girl, 18, Rastafarian girl, was arrested by police, and they cut her dreadlocks.
Whoa.
For absolutely no reason.
On the street?
No, in the police station. In custody for absolutely no reason whatsoever. So these are and sometimes now and again, there was a young Rasta family in London who just won a case, wanted to get the boy into a school, and they denied him because of his dreadlocks. So every now and again, these things do crop up where someone is denied access to a school, to a good education because of dreadlocks and so on. So it'd be nice to have some young people in here, boys and girls, to talk about how they think the politics of their own black hair and how they want to express it. Yeah, and we could probably have a part 2 to this podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
But thank you guys. It's been great. It's
a great idea, Errol, though. Even though Patrick had to come along.
Wait.
I just want to say, Jay, there's nothing wrong with a comb. So
anyway, they've made laws which have outlawed discrimination on the grounds of hair. You know, and the Equality Act in Britain doesn't exclusively mention the 2010 Equality Act, doesn't exclusively mention hair, but talks about what they call protective characteristics, which is like race, culture, religion, and so forth. However, talking about the same case of Ruby Williams, there was a barrister who tweeted a message, a guy called John Holbrook or something like that, and he basically said, the Equality Act is empowering people to ignore school rules and discipline to address like the needs of a stroppy teenager of colour. You know what I mean? I think he disciplined, he may well have even lost his job. I know there was a big stink over that anyway. But yeah, hair politics for black people is a serious thing. It's ongoing. It seems to be never ending, and we have to keep fighting it. Otherwise, you know, they'll end up all of us wearing
and make sure you go get yourself an Afro pick with the fist and the peace sign.
Yeah, bro.
You know, I mean, these are the things that I remember from when I was, you know, a child. You know what I mean? So
I had one.
Yeah, I've had several of them. I've had picks break. You know, these are the other things that we didn't even touch on. Is like just combing your hair with plastic things and to just snap off in your hair. You know, it's those things that we also have to keep in mind. It's like we need oil in our hair. This environment isn't good for our hair.
Yeah.
You know, so we need to remember how to, as I said, you know, if you're going to have children who are going to have hair that it's going to grow out natural, then you need to teach them how to take care of natural hair. You know what I mean? You need to make sure. And yeah, I mean, we could go on about non-black owned hair places.
We have to come back to this topic and do a part
we could go on, but
yeah, most definitely.
Peace.